for ZCASH. As you can see here, we have ZCASH at $604, still up 21% in the last 7 days, but we are down 3.6% in the last 24 hours because we just now recently had a pullback here inside of ZCASH, as you can see. So we're going to talk about where this is going to go next. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor, none of this is financial advice, but let's go straight over it. And as you can see here, I have this video that I made talking about ZCASH, and it was titled ZCASH is about to take off, but don't get trapped. So you can see up here we have this resistance level. I'm going to let this play here for a second. A possibility to push up here to this next resistance. But at this point, ZCASH is either going to take the dump here, right? Or ZCASH is going to be able to push all the way up here to this resistance at 870 and then dump from there, right? And then, okay, so in that video, we pretty much talk about how ZCASH is about to either, have a pullback and dump from this level, which is pretty much where we are now. So on that chart, on that particular chart, I think we were at the 4-hour chart here. But anyways, it was showing us pulling all the way down to here to this support. And you can see we've actually got stopped at our 50-day moving average, right? So I mentioned ZCASH was either going to take off from here and then dump, or we're just going to straight dump from there. So I guess we just decided to take the dumping option, and we just started to dump from there. But we've hit this support here, like I mentioned before, at the 50-day moving average. So we'll see what we get after that. So that's what we got there from ZCASH. But also pulling up the daily chart. So I always talk about divergence here. Always talk about divergence. And if you look here, this is a bearish divergence, higher highs on the charts and lower highs on the MACD. And we can kind of see here. So as you can see, lower highs on the charts, or lower highs on the MACD, higher highs on the charts. So like I was saying here, we look to be getting some lower highs here on the MACD, right? While simultaneously having the higher highs here on the chart, as you can see here, 1, 2. So we have our higher highs here, and then we have our lower highs here. The real question is, are we going to have another lower high here on the MACD before pulling back, or are we about to have a dump here inside of ZCASH? That is the real question, because if you look at this, that does look like it's the lowest amount of buying pressure that we could have at that moment, right? It just looks like a small amount of buying pressure. So unless we're going to have another wave of small buying pressure right here, then I would argue that this looks like it's about to sell off, and we're about to get a larger sell off right here. So that's kind of how it's looking. And then if you look at this from the perspective of just looking at the chart in general, right? Because when you're thinking about the divergence, you're having the higher highs on the charts and then the lower highs on the MACD. We just showed the lower highs on the MACD. How high is the next higher high really going to get? Or are we even going to get another higher high, right? So that's kind of the area that I'm looking at this at right now, because it looks a little bit weird here. We should have had more buying pressure here, right? This is what I was expecting. I was expecting somewhere around this amount of buying pressure, and then that would be our next higher high on the chart and lower high on the MACD, right? That would be the lower high there on the MACD, and then the next higher high on the chart. I was expecting for it to push up higher, more so like this, but it did not do that. We had a very, very small push. This small push right here represents these two green candles here on the MACD. Those two green candles did that whole move right there. So unless we get another move like that with the same type of candle structure, then we're probably going to be bearish, because if we don't get the same type of candle structure to push us up higher, then what happens next is that selling pressure starts to pick up, and then we start to see the actual bearishness from our bearish divergence, right? Because it is bearish divergence, but we still get higher highs on the bearish divergence, and it does seem like we've gotten the last higher high possibly. So we'll see what exactly happens with that. I think that right now we are also building a kind of a rising wedge, which is also bearish in its own form. So you also have to look at it from that perspective as well. So we can take off this falling wedge, because we already talked about that, the reason why it broke out on the last video. We talked about the falling wedge that we had there. We talked about the other one that we had, which was our bull flag, right? On the way up here, we had the bull flag down there. So that's why we talked about that. And then we have what we have now, which is our divergence. So that's the main thing that we have to look at right now when it comes to ZCASH. So looking at the rising wedge though that we have forming here, it does seem to be a rising wedge. So whatever happens here is going to be very, very, very important, because if we have a major pullback on this rising wedge, then we could probably come down here to the 50-day moving average, which is going to be at that support at about $440. So then we could see us pulling back down to 440, because that's our Fibonacci support, and that's also our 50-day moving average, where that's going to be around that time. So if we don't get more buying pressure here and another lower high on the MACD, then that means that we sell off and we go down below this, because this is a rising wedge, which is the bearish pattern. So we'll see what exactly happens there. We also had two top outs here. So we topped out twice here on the percent R trend exhaustion, and we have that as a bearish double top. So that's kind of what it's seeming like now. It's seeming like the bearish double top scenario, and almost like we're about to start pulling back. And this would make sense, especially if Bitcoin starts to pull back alongside of everything else, which Bitcoin is doing right now. And I've already talked about Bitcoin in my previous video, and how we might have a larger pullback inside of Bitcoin happening, and possibly another bull trap, right? Another bull trap followed by another drawdown. And if that happens, the same thing could happen inside of Zcash, where we see a pump, right? And I was talking about this before, like where we see a pump followed by another pullback, right? Like one more last higher high on the chart and one last lower high on the MACD, right? So I feel like something like that could happen, right? So we have to get ready for that, and that would still be the same thing as having, it would be the same thing as the rising wedge being here, right? Because maybe we do get one last push, but it still looks like it's bearish, like it's going to pull back. It's just like, when is it going to pull back? Is it going to dump now, or is it going to push for that last high and then is it going to dump? So yeah, so it's one or the other. That's how it's looking right now when it comes to Zcash. But yeah, anyways, this is pretty much all I got for that. I just wanted to come and talk about that here on this video. Shout out to the members of the channel. Shout out to the member that recommended this video. And one last thing I would say here on the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart is looking pretty weak. This is the percent R trend exhaustion. It has stopped halfway. So hopefully it does something like this, where the percent R trend exhaustion has a continuation upwards after stopping halfway, right? But right now, we just have to wait and see what exactly is it doing here. What exactly is it telling us that it's doing, right? And then when you look at the MACD here, we can see some lower highs, and you can see here higher high on the chart. That's bearish divergence. So another question is, will we push up one more time to have another higher high on the chart, right? Same thing, the exact same thing I was saying this time, but on a smaller time frame on the 4-hour. And then pulling back, which it kind of looks like it's in the process of doing. So again, I think we might have one more push up followed by a dump. That's what it's looking like to me. Like it's about to push up one last time. I don't know if it'll get above the last high. Maybe it will, but it looks like it wants to push up one last time before it dumps. So we'll see if we can push $700 on this next push up on Zcash. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on that. Now, let's talk about what some people are talking about on Zcash, all the user sentiment. As you can see here, this guy Nihal, whatever his name is, says retail is panicking, but whales are quietly loading Zcash. While weekends fear a small dip, 270 whales are setting up for a potential squeeze. The long/short ratio exploded to 498%, with 177 whales sitting on $35.5 million plus of unrealized profits, while most shorts are getting trapped. So yeah, negative funding plus overcrowded shorts equals fuel for a violent move up. So that's what this person is saying. And then this is what they're showing here. The whales versus the ones that are buying versus the ones that are selling. So that is an interesting way of putting it. It's an interesting way of looking at it. So I guess that's another perspective that we can see it by. Now over here, this person Lucky, he says levels held, chart was right, Zcash respected, support perfectly, watching the next move. So yeah, this is also another possibility where, yeah, maybe whales are trying to push this thing higher. Doesn't beat the fact that we're in a rising wedge. What if whales are just trying to push up higher until we get to like 7 or something, so then the whales can then dump? What if the whales are intentionally trying to make people think that they're buying and buying and buying, but really the whales are getting ready to dump, right? That's why you're seeing more transactions happening with the whales. They're getting ready for the dump. Like, you look at it as, oh, they're buying, this is the time to go. No, 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 no. See, the whales have been buying all the way down here, right? And then when it comes up here, whales start to sell, they push it down, and then whales start to buy right back in at large amounts. And then it pushes it higher one more time, traps some more of the bulls, and then dump even more. So that's kind of how it's looking right now. But yeah, again, let me know what you guys think about this. I feel like if we do dump, again, we can come down here to this 200-day moving average. The 50-day on the 1 week chart or on the daily chart was at 430. So somewhere around 430, maybe even around 380. That's where we're going to be looking for if we do have a pullback. All right. So this person says, Rinsky says, new wallet just pulled nearly $8 million worth of Zcash off Binance in under an hour. 11.8K Zcash gone straight into self-custody. And if it's going straight into self-custody, that means people are buying from Binance and then they're sending it to their own private wallets to hold it. So that means people are trying to accumulate Zcash and hold it at large amounts. That's what that's showing, $8 million worth. And that might be because that they realize, hey, it's about to pump. But a lot of people, when they see this, they're like, oh, it's going to keep going. But see, sometimes you have to know when to not be greedy. You have to know when to not be greedy. When you see it come up here, that is going to be your target when you're like, okay, it might pull back. But look, rising wedges are not 100%. Look up the win rate for a rising wedge, right? It's not 100%. All right, none of the patterns are 100%. I've seen plenty of times where we were bullish and we blew right past rising wedges. But since it is a rising wedge, I'm going to lean more bearish, because in a rising wedge, this is supposed to happen, right? That is supposed to happen in a rising wedge. This is not supposed to happen in a rising wedge. So if that does happen, then that just means this is one of the rising wedges that were incorrect, because they don't have a 100% win rate. If you look it up, they're actually like a 72% win rate. But that means about 70% of the time, it's going to be bearish. So about 70% of the time, if it's going to be bearish, then I'm going to wait for it to be bearish, because more often than not, it is bearish. But it's not 100%. And that's why you wait for the confirmation, because if it blows past this and keeps going up, then you know you dodged a bullet. But if it does this, then you know that you were right on time. All right. So yeah, that's what I got for that. And then this is a different one. This guy says ZCASH massive bearish divergence. As you can see, everybody else that we mentioned, they were all super bullish. This is the one person that's not super bullish. And if you look over here, bearish divergence, remember, is higher highs on the chart. But there's always a final higher high before the dump. And that's what you want to pay attention to here. So he says massive bearish divergence on the daily chart for ZCASH. I almost said ZStash, but for ZCASH, coming out of historically overbought territory. I would be careful buying the FOMO right now. And this is exactly how you guys need to be looking at this, because on the daily chart, we do have massive bearish divergence, right? If you pull up the dailies here, you look at this, this is bearish divergence. Now, can it push up one last time? Yes, there's a possibility, but there's also a possibility we can just break down here. So here's the theory for me. We either just break down here, or we push up to higher levels, higher highs, and then we break down. Either way, we're about to break down though. And this is the only other person that is seeing it on Twitter that I've seen. So yeah, he said massive bearish divergence on the daily chart. So look, bearish divergence, last higher high means what? It's going to dump. So yeah, I think this thing is overbought, and I think it's going to dump either now, or it's going to push up to about 700 in that range and then dump. But we got to wait for it. So let's stay ready. Let's stay prepared. But yeah, this is all I got for you guys today. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice. Shout out to the member of the channel that recommended this. And if you guys want to make recommendations of me going over any crypto or stock, as long as it's not a low cap scam coin, you can have me go over any of those if you become a member of the channel. Just click that join button. It's $9.99 per month, and I'll do a full analysis on anything for you, just like this. So shout out to you guys, and as always, I'll be back with another video.